everyone. Welcome to kind of a random little video. This is going to be on my, if you're here, you already know, but this is going to be on my secondary channel. If you're looking for gameplay videos, look at my primary channel, Coffee Witch Mushra. This one's going on Cozy Witch Mushra. I'm going to try to talk about books that I've been reading. So this is for January. Woohoo! I will say, though, this book in particular, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, I actually started reading it in December and I finished it like right at the end of December, so it doesn't technically count. However, I made myself a little like curriculum type thing, and because it is part of my curriculum for 2026, I'm going to include it in this video, even though I technically read it at the very, very, very end of 2025. Anyways, Grady Hendrix, great author. Really like him. I did not like the Final Girl Support Group, funny enough. That's the one that's like, it's the best-selling author of the Final Girl Support Group. That one's his worst book so far. And I've read basically all of his books, except for the newer one that's about the Wayward Witches, or whatever. School for Wayward Witches, or something like that. I forget what the title is. I haven't read that one yet. And I also haven't read Paperbacks from Hell, but that one's not a work of fiction. That one is nonfiction, from what I understand. Still interested in reading it. Anyways, this book was good. This book pissed me off and made me cry. I don't know if I would be like rating them or anything, but this one was really good. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend basically anything from Grady Hendrix. He writes women very well. They're just human beings, right? And that's how he writes them. It's really good. I will say, though, We Sold Our Souls is probably my favorite book from him, but my very first book that I read from him was My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is also really good. But I loved We Sold Our Souls. That one is crazy. This one is also quite crazy. Another thing that I really like about him and his writing in general is, like, he's really not afraid to let his main characters or any character get fucked up. Like... terrible things happen to people in all of his books. But most of the time in horror books, people are a little too afraid to, like, dismember their main character, for instance. He's not. He'll do it. He'll maim them. It's great. He also, in case you didn't know, he also wrote Horror Store, which is like the haunted IKEA book. So he's that author. He's great. I love his writing. The Final Girl Support Group really sucked, but everything else from him, really, really good. Highly recommend him in general. This one is about a woman. He also tends to write older women, which is great. So, because I think there's not really enough older woman representation in a lot of writing, especially in a lot of horror. It's usually like teenagers getting slashed, right? So, anyways, it's about this older woman whose parents die tragically. And then she and her brother are like fighting all the time, and they're kind of distanced from each other, and they have to deal with the aftermath of their parents' death. And one of those things is selling the house. But also her mom worked with puppets and dolls and such, and so the house is filled with puppets and dolls, and you know, the house is a little bit haunted, so you can imagine how that's gonna go. Terribly. It's great. It's wonderful. It, like, oh my god, in the beginning I wanted to slap the brother so hard. Like, he's such a douchebag in the beginning. There's a lot of character growth too, so like, he does a really good job at writing these characters, but I was so angry in the beginning. I was like, oh my god, both of these characters are pissing me off right now, but like in a good way. Like, I'm not pissed off because the writing is bad. I'm pissed off because the writing is so good and they're both driving me nuts. But in a good way. So anyways, and then like there are moments for sure where I'm like, oh my god, I feel so bad for these people, like so bad, and I cried, and it's great. It's a great book. It depends on what you're afraid of too, because I wouldn't necessarily say this book is like terrifying or scary, but I'm also not like too afraid of dolls or puppets. I mean, I think they're creepy, but like, and I like spooky haunted stories about them. They're really scary in Fatal Frame, But like when I think about it realistically in real life, I'm kind of like, eh. So for me, it wasn't like a scary book, but it is thrilling for sure. Really good book. Highly recommend it. That was kind of what got me started with all of the reading for 2026. Which leads us into, hang on, boop. There we go. Rotten Tommy. Rotten Tommy is another horror book. However, this author I do not like so much. David Sodergren. I read, I want to say it's called The Forgotten Island by him, because I was looking for a horror book. That book, I'm pretty sure it's called The Forgotten Island. I should have looked it up beforehand, but whatever. I'm just going to call it The Forgotten Island because I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. But it's about like this island that is completely left alone, right? Like the locals, the people that live on the island that's close to the other island, they're like, we don't even look at it. We don't look at that island. We don't mention that island. No one goes there. Someone takes this group of touristy people over to the island because they really want to go. And it has to deal with giant spiders. And spiders are the thing that I'm most afraid of in the world because I have arachnophobia. And so I was like, this should be a really good horror book then, right? Wrong. It's wrong. It's not. I don't like the way that he writes about women. So he's like the exact opposite. He's the antithesis of Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix writes women like they are human beings. David Sodergren writes women and writes about women, for the most part, from these two books that I've read, like they are pieces of meat specifically for men to hump. I don't like it. Rotten Tommy, I will say, though, was a lot better than The Forgotten Island. In The Forgotten Island, there's just like a lot of gratuitous sex and like the guys cheating on the girls and like using them sexually and also getting off on their pain and stuff. And I'm like, I don't like it. So I don't know, maybe David Sodergren isn't necessarily purposefully trying to write as if he believes women are only there to be fucked, right? And mistreated by women. Maybe he's trying to say these men are bad and I'm going to make them despicable and gross so that you cheer on them dying in my book. I don't really know, but like I don't like how he writes the women either, because the women typically are like, yes, I love being used by men, fuck me. And I'm like, can you not? Like, is that your only personality trait? Like, except for maybe the main character who is a woman, he always writes as women as well. I'm going to read maybe one or two more by David Sodergren that I've heard are really good, but in general, I don't recommend him. That being said, Rotten Tommy was pretty good. Until the end. The main character is autistic, and he writes her really, really well. Because from what I understand, he also is autistic. Cool. So we have some autism representation, which is great. I really like that. And she's written super well. Like, I very much related to her. I don't know if I am or not. I've not been diagnosed, but like it is in my family a little bit, and I wouldn't doubt it because I relate a lot to a lot of autistic traits and stuff. Anyways, so I think that he wrote that character very, very, very well. Most of the other characters really, really sucked. Rotten Tommy was actually terrifying. If you don't like gore, don't read this book. It gets gory. It gets like, oh my god, levels of gore. And also the end sucked. Like, it was doing so well until the end. And this is going to be a pattern with another book, kind of, where like I went into it being like, all right, open your mind, get the bad thoughts and the bad association that you have with this author out of your head. I will say within the first 5 pages, there's a man sexualizing women, like in the first 5 pages, 5 minutes. And I was just like, really? Again? Immediately? Come on, man. Like a dude just talking about tits and ass. And I'm like, dude, stop it. Stop doing that. It's annoying. It's so annoying when you have your male characters just sexualize everyone. Anyways, So yeah, that is a major issue with his writing that I have, but he does write well. So take that with a grain of salt. This one is about the woman. Oh my god, I totally forget her. I want to say her name is like Ruth or Beth or something like that. I'm really bad with names. Sorry. And she and her husband are doing some kind of renovation in one of their rooms in their house that is her parents' house. And the dudes that are doing the renovation find a box that has 3 VHS tapes and a missing persons poster in it. And the missing persons poster is her when she was a child, but she has no recollection of ever having gone missing. And also her mother went missing on that date that's on her missing persons poster. And so she's like, maybe this will lead me to find out where my mom went and if she's still alive and everything. This woman is also like in her 40s. So another representation of older women, which is great. And then from there, you know, it's kind of like The Ring-ish. It's not like 7 days. It's not quite like that. But it is like, if you watch this tape, Rotten Tommy's gonna come for you and he's gonna kill you. So, yeah, although I will say the more descriptions they give of him, the less scary he is, even though he's terrifying. But like, he's basically like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in a black suit. Like, but tall like Slender Man. It's weird. I don't know. But he has a hammer. He will crush the shit out of you. Good book though. I mean, up until a certain point, there's a certain point, like I want to say the last like 20 or 30% of the book, it gets weird. And I remember like feeling it turn. There's literally 3 parts to the book. It's in part 3. Like part 1, great. Part 2, okay, I have a lot of questions. I would love to see them answered. Part 3, they don't get answered and shit gets real weird. It gets like really, really weird and not necessarily in a good way. And then it ends. And I will say, I listened to the audiobook of this. The narrator's awesome. If you want to listen to it, she does a great job narrating. I don't know who narrates it. I'm so sorry. But yeah, she does a great job narrating it. But I remember like sitting in bed going like, okay, I have 40 minutes left. So I was just like playing a little color match game. I Love Hue is what it's called. It's really fun. So I was playing a little game while I'm listening, and it felt to me like it had only been 20 minutes, but then it was like the end, and I was like, wait, what? No, that can't be it. That's where it ends? Why? What? Nothing got answered. I have so many questions. Literally nothing got answered. Like so many plot strands left open. And so for me, I was like, that's really unsatisfying, actually, and that kind of pisses me off. So, I cannot, in good faith, recommend David Sodergren books at all, in general, because so far, one of them is like a 0 out of, pick a number, it's a 0, right? Out of 0.0001, it's a 0 for me. That one, the Forgotten Island one, fuck that book. This one, pretty good. I guess if it's like out of 5, I'm giving it like a 3. It's like middle of the road. Because it started well, the writing is done well, the gore is horrific. I don't really like gore very much. I didn't realize it was gonna get super gory, but like, oh my freaking god, oh my god. Ugh. Gross. Sorry, I was just thinking about one of the deaths in particular. It's gross. The gore is very well written. The ending really killed it for me, though. I did not enjoy the ending at all. So, there's that one. Next, I read Babel by R.F. Kuang, which was amazing. The best book I've read so far this whole year. Like, it's so good. It's so freaking good. I was sobbing at the end of this book, okay? It's really good. Especially for someone like me where like I was an English major and I really, really liked linguistics. I sadly learned that linguistics was kind of what I actually wanted to study. I didn't realize it was available at my school, and I didn't realize that was what the subject was called for the things that I was actually interested in when it came to the English language and language in general, linguistics. But if you have any kind of fascination with linguistics, etymology, that kind of stuff, like I do, this book is so interesting. Like where words come from and all that stuff. This one is like a historical fiction, um, historical fantasy, I should say, because of course it's fiction, but it takes place at Oxford. It's really hard to describe, but like there is a magic system that has to do with silver and language. Um, and you have to find like match pairs in order to activate the silver to get it to do whatever you're trying to get it to do. And it's about this kid who was taken from China and then basically brought up and trained on multiple different languages so that he can go to Oxford where there is a Tower of Babel that's like 8 stories tall. And eventually the people that they call Babblers, when you become a Babbler, right, you study for 4 years, I want to say, and then you have to take these tests where then it kind of determines where in the tower you'll probably work, or if you'll go like into other countries and help translate things there for the British Empire and whatnot. Or if you're going to be doing silver working, which is where everyone wants to be because it's the most prestigious, it's the most important, it's the most well paid, it's the most interesting, I guess. But it has a lot to do with like the Industrial Revolution and inequity and like inequality, like all just it's a commentary on the world, basically. That still sadly applies today, and colonialism and stuff. Like it's I don't know how else to describe it other than it's amazing. You have to read it. It's really good. It's not just about the linguistics. Like the characters are really well written. Like I freaking love this book. It is quite large. It's like 600 pages or something like that. So biggest book I've read this year. Also, I had to read it across a few weeks because I could only read so much. Because it is a lot of information also, but it reads very easily. It's a big book, but it's not like, and it is fairly academic in a lot of ways, but it's not like dry, right? Like it's not like you're reading a textbook at all. You're reading a fiction book, but there are parts where it feels slightly like you're reading a textbook because you're getting real world information in with the fantasy and fiction elements, but like the way that it's all weaved together is done so well. I really like this book, and the ending, like I said, made me sob. Like this book is almost perfection. Highly recommend it. I need to read more by R.F. Kuang. This is the first book I've ever read from her. I'm a little afraid to read The Poppy Wars because I've heard that one is heartbreaking as well. I don't know. So anyways, this one's amazing. Highly recommend it. It was super good. And then I read Crimson Peak. And I literally finished this book last night. If I can read one more book before the end of the month, I'll probably include it after this part. If not, these are the three books that I read in January. My goal is to read 2 books in each month in general. I want to read minimum 18 books, but like I want to strive for 2 books a month, 24 books total. Because last year I wanted to read 1 book a month and I read 18. So I'm like, cool, this year let's keep on that 18, but let's try to go for 24. And if I can do like 36, that'd be great. Anyways, I read Crimson Peak. I freaking love this movie. I did not love the book. I think the person who wrote this, which is Nancy Holder, no offense to you, she's won awards. I'm sure you're awesome. I did not like this book. I did not think that it captured the movie very well. I think for me when I was reading it, okay, well, let's scroll back just a touch. What I was expecting from this book was essentially, because it is a novelization of the movie, right? It's a movie to book adaptation, not a, and it doesn't even say adaptation. It's not even supposed to be adapted, right? Necessarily. I guess you can consider it one though. it's a novelization of the movie. Therefore, I was expecting that it would be the movie, but written rather than, and thus perhaps we would get a little more context and background information on some characters and some things. Like, if you haven't seen this movie yet, there might be some spoilers in this because I have to complain about something. A lot of things. But for instance, learning a little more about Lucille and Thomas's history, their background, their parents, right? I think that would have been really cool. We do get one chapter of that, which is great. When it comes to Dr. Alan McMichael, I was always very curious, like, what was going through his head in certain scenes in the movie, because you can like see him thinking and you can kind of guess what he's thinking, but having a novelization that tells us what he's thinking would be so interesting. And we do get that. We get a few extra scenes just with him that kind of explain his thought process and what's going through his head, and some things that don't even happen in the movie, which, like, that's fine. So I expected some changes. I expected some additions, perhaps, right? But for the most part, I wanted like 99 to 98, maybe 97% of this book to just be the movie written down as a novel. And that's what I was hoping for, and that's what I was expecting. Yes and no for what this book is. I would say it's more like 80% of this book is accurate to the movie, and the rest of it is not, which was so disappointing. And it's like the changes that were made were not good. They were not good changes. There was additional dialogue that would pop up, but it didn't flow well with what because I've seen this movie so many times that like I've memorized it, right? I know what the dialogue should be. So someone will be saying something and then like they just change it. You know what? I'm going to go grab the book. I'm going to read you some passages. Hold on. Okay, I've got the book. To start with, before I get reading into some passages, because that's a little bit spoilery territory, one of my least favorite things that this book does is combine scenes and also locations. If you've seen this movie, when you walk into Allerdale Hall, right, or when they walk into it, there's the staircase to the left, there's like the kitchen area to the right, and straight ahead there is like a sitting room, right? And that's where the piano is, the coat of arms with the little Latin phrase above it, and then on the opposite wall is the giant portrait of the Sharp's mother, right? They, in the book, combined that room with the library, which I'm pretty sure is not the same room. If it is, all of the shots of the library in the movie do not show the piano. I need to review this, honestly, but they don't show the piano or the portrait. So they, like, combined the two rooms together, and then they smushed together two completely different scenes that happen, like, 20 minutes away from each other, like, apart. And I was very confused about that. It didn't make sense. Another thing I really didn't like is they created a character called It. Like, it's only referred to as It. It watched as the new bride did this. It watched blah, blah, blah. I really hated that because it tended to happen in moments that were, like, really, really tense, right? When the ghosts first start showing up for Edith in the house, I would have so much rather, because it's all written in third person, but it like follows certain characters, right? I would have so much rather we got it from the perspective of Edith herself, seeing the ghost, hearing what her thoughts might be, what she's feeling, how she's going to act. You know what I mean? But instead they take us even further away from that third person. Because it would be like a I forget what it's called. It's like third person limited? Third person unlimited? Omnipresent? I don't remember. I used to know, but I don't remember anymore. There's different types of third person writing depending on... They explained it like a camera that's like sometimes the third person is like in the person's head, but it's written in third person, but it's as if it's from a first person perspective, right? So you can hear their thoughts, you can feel what they're feeling, but it's all written in third person. She and he and it, rather than I. There's third person where you're sitting on their shoulder, so you kind of sometimes maybe get a whiff of like what they're thinking and what they're feeling, but usually it's still kind of separate from that person, but it's like right over their shoulder. And then there's another third person perspective that is like really, it's like a camera really zoomed out and you're watching it from like really far away. That's what the It did, right? Whenever it was like, it watched blah, 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 and this happened. When it is observing everyone, it just feels like the camera pulls really far away from everyone, and so you're not really in the moment with those characters anymore. And it sucked because it was like with all of the really, really tense moments when the ghosts show up, when there is an attack at the end, in a way, like there's just some weird entity that's only called It that for some really, really, really freaking weird reason is never explained. It's never explained what it is. But it like pulls you out of the moment. And I was like, oh, that's so lame, because these are the most tense, thrilling, scary moments in the book, and it pulls you away from them by adding this whole new character. That's stupid. So I really did not like that. I didn't like when they added like different dialogue in with certain things. Let me see if I can find one. So this is towards the end. Edith and Lucille are talking to each other. Spoilers. It's during the scene where Lucille and Edith are up in the attic. It's right before Thomas dies. And Lucille is trying to get Edith to sign the papers, right? And so Edith says, all this horror, for what? For money, to keep the mansion, the sharp name, the mines, which I don't quite remember if she asks that many questions, but I feel like she only asked like 2 of those 4 questions, Edith. Lucille, in the book, says, what vulgarians you Americans are. The marriages were for money, of course, quite acceptable for people like us, expected even for generations, but the horror was for love. Now, from what I can remember in the movie, she doesn't say all of that. She just says, the marriages were for money, of course, but the horror was for love. So, like, there's added dialogue, and I'm like, what did that addition add, though? It didn't do anything. It just, like, padded the text. That's it. Like, it's so puzzling and confusing and confounding and really frustrating that, like, that's pretty common. It's so, I'm just like, dude, come on, man. Where is the other one? Hang on. There's a really silly moment. Okay, so when Thomas dies, right? It describes his death kind of from his perspective, which is great. But then he says, in the movie, he doesn't say anything. I think he just says Lucille. That's it. Just like very sad Lucille. In the book, he says, it will be fine. Or the things we do. And then he looks at her and whatever. And then he says, oh, sister, you killed me. And I was like, what the fuck? That is so cheesy. That's so cheesy. What? He doesn't say that in the movie. That completely ruined the moment for me. For me personally, I was like, dude, what? That's so lame. Another change, like tiny little changes, but these changes are so small, but they make such a huge impact on how the characters are portrayed, in how the plot develops. Like, there's some conversations, very small, very subtle, very like cryptic, right, between Lucille and Thomas in the very beginning, that in the movie, when we see it, it's like, okay, those are some red flags for us, the audience, that, you know, Edith isn't really aware of yet. In the book, they either completely cut those out or they changed them so that they don't carry the same weight. It doesn't seem like as weird for them to be saying these things because they changed the things that they say. So then it's not really weird. Another really big thing when Edith and Thomas first arrive at Allerdale Hall, in the movie, Finley says, or Thomas is like, Finley, I'd like to introduce you to my bride. Jesus Christ with those cars. And then Finley says, yes, you've been married a while now, right? And then Edith says, like, what's he talking about? And Thomas says, well, I don't know. And basically insinuates that, like, he's been with the family for a long time, he must be confused, right? So he kind of covers for the fact that Finley just said this thing by saying, like, he's just old and crazy. In the book, she comes to that conclusion completely on her own. And I was like, I don't think Edith would just be like, that crazy old man. He's so crazy thinking that we've been married forever. He must be insane. He must be senile. Like, she thinks it completely of her own volition in the book. Whereas Edith in the movie, I'm sorry, but she's really brave. She's really curious about things. She's not afraid to ask questions or push boundaries. In the book, she doesn't like to push the boundaries. She does them like, on accident. Oops, whoops. Oh no, I didn't mean to say this thing. I didn't like the at the very, very beginning when she's talking to Alan and Alan's like, I opened my new practice. You should come up and see. And then his mom and his sister come around and they're like, yes, we were just talking about Sir Thomas Sharp, Baronet, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And she's like, someone goes like, what's a baronet? And she goes, it's a parasite with a title, right? Edith in the movie seems to mean what she says, and she said it on purpose. It's a parasite with a title, right? And then they kind of are like, she fancies herself our very own Jane Austen, who was a spinster, right? And then she goes, actually, I fancy myself Mary Shelley. She died a widow. Good day. And then she leaves, right? Like, she's kind of catty and witty and funny. But in the book, she kind of like says it's a parasite with a title, and then she, in her head, she's like, oh no, did I say that out loud? Whoops, I didn't mean to. How rude of me. I really shouldn't have said that. And I'm just like, no, Edith, I swear to God, how she's portrayed in the movie, Edith would have had said that 2 feet down on the ground. She would have been like, bitch, he's a parasite with the title. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like the characterization of Edith in particular is so wrong. It's so wrong. They get it so wrong, in my opinion. And it completely changes the voice and, like, the vibe of the book and of the characters and of the plot and everything. And then they removed or changed some of the clues so that, like, instead of building up a tower of like little red flags that we're kind of noticing that something's not quite right, and she might start noticing it too pretty soon, but like we as the audience are noticing things that she's not aware of yet, so we know something is wrong before she does. But like by the end of it, we're like, oh my God. And then the tower falls down and it's great. Like the metaphorical tower of clues, I mean, falls down and it like hits you and you're like, oh my God, what a great little mystery. That was so good. And then when you look back and you rewatch it again, you're like, oh my God, I understand these clues now. The book doesn't do that. It completely gets rid of most of them or changes them. And I'm just like, that's so lame. Like, why would you diminish the building up of the events happening? Like, that's so strange. Other things that are like small but important, I think, for just like the character building. There's a scene where she's in the clay pits area with the vats of clay pits, and there's like 6 down below in the basement. And like one of them is kind of like shaking, and so she, like, in the movie, she finds like a bar or something and breaks the lock that's on it and then throws off the lid and then is like sticks the little rod or whatever that she used to break the lock inside to kind of feel around and see if anything is in there. And then when there's nothing, she kind of just lifts it out, leaves it on the side, and then walks away. And then the mother's corpse floats up from the clay. We still have the floating up of the mother's corpse from the clay, but this happens when she steals the key in the book, the Enola key. She steals the key, and then she drops it in the book. She drops it in the clay pit. Why? I don't know. And then she's like, gee, golly gosh darn it, now I have to reach my hand inside of there. And so she reaches her hand, her whole arm goes into the clay pit to grab the key. and then she finds some kind of hose or spigot or something and like rinses all of the red off of her and off of the key. And then in the next scene, which is where Lucille realizes the key is missing, knows Edith probably has it, goes up to check on Edith to make sure that she has it and probably to yell at her or whatever, right? And Edith is like, oh, I have to pretend like I'm not feeling well. Oh no. And she puts a blanket over her lap to hide the clay, the red clay stains that are on her golden dress, because she's wearing a golden dress. She stuck her arm in the clay that stains red. Golden dress. Stuck her arm in it. Next scene, no mention of it. She's not hiding her arm underneath the blanket at all, right? Like, it's stuff like this where I'm like, why did you change that? Like, ooh, to make it more thrilling, I guess, because, oh no, now she's stuck her arm in there, but she doesn't hide her arm, which is stained red now. And it doesn't make any sense. So, like, there's just stuff like that makes absolutely no sense. And it was ticking me off. I'm getting really heated. It was just like, oh my God, I was so peeved. And then at the very, 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 very end, after everything has gone down, it's basically right after where the credits would be, or like right in between in the movie, right in between the part where she's just killed Lucille and she's picking up Alan and they're leaving Crimson Peak. She confesses that she loves him. Like Alan. She loves Alan. She confesses to Alan that she loves him. And he says it to her as well. And then they try to get some horses that were in some stables, I guess, on the property, which are, one, never seen in the movie, and two, never ever mentioned in the book. And suddenly there's random horses in a random stable that was not originally on the property, that was never ever mentioned. But they can't get the horses because when they open the gates, the horses smell the blood and get scared, and then they run away. So then they're like, well, I guess we're walking now. And I'm like, what? Like, again, an addition to the book that literally does nothing. There's no reason for it to be there. Why did you add it in there? It's so freaking weird. It's so weird. It's so weird. I hate it. So anyways, yes, the beginning like 15 or 20% of this book was decent because, again, it stuck to the movie really, really closely, even in terms of dialogue. There was some additional dialogue that felt a little clunky and like weird and out of place because it didn't really flow with the rest of the dialogue. Like, they would add something in there, but it didn't really match how people spoke, because how people spoke was what was originally in the movie. And so the additional dialogue throughout always felt really clunky and really strange and like out of place because you could kind of tell it wasn't written by the same person who wrote the original dialogue. It was strange. So there was a little bit of that in the beginning, in like the first, I don't know, 50 pages or something like that. And then in the middle is where it started getting a little bit weird, like just weird things started, weird changes that, like, again, I'm like, why did they change this? It doesn't make any sense for them to have changed this. It worked perfectly fine in the movie. Are they like trying to make it so it's like, oh, you'll never guess now, people who've seen the movie, we're going to change it. It's going to be more thrilling. Ooh. And for me, I'm like, no, but it's not. It would have been more thrilling to just read the freaking movie, but have more detail and more context for what was happening in the actual movie, rather than you changing parts of the movie to make it more thrilling, quote unquote. Like, I don't know. It was so weird. This book is weird. So yeah, if you're like a huge fan of Crimson Peak like I am, the book will probably suck. The book will probably suck because it's not movie accurate. And to me, I'm like, this is such an egregious insult. It's so insulting. It's so not cool. It's not a big issue, honestly. It's just a freaking book. But like, I was like so peeved while reading it. 2 stars out of 5, okay? It's not good. Don't read the book. Watch the movie. The movie's fantastic. The book sucks. Or read the book first and then watch the movie and do it that way. I don't know, but I highly recommend the book. I highly recommend the movie. I don't recommend the book. The characters are weird in the book. It's so strange. I did not like the book. So disappointing. It was so disappointing. I had such high expectations for this book, and it sucked. So I did have to put that little disclaimer in there, though, that I really, really love Crimson Peak, the movie, and so I think I'm a little biased towards it. But, like, here's the thing, too. A book-to-movie adaptation, changes will be made, and that makes sense, because books tend to be 200 to, like, 600 pages, depending on how big of a book you're reading, right? Median is maybe, like, 300, 400 pages for a book. And scripts, from what I can remember, and I could be very wrong, but I learned about script writing like more than a decade ago, so things might have changed. I don't really know. But from what I understand, with a script, roughly one page is about a minute of time, right? So one script page is 1 minute. So if you have a 90-page script, it's 90 minutes. I say roughly because it depends on what you're putting on those pages, obviously. But that's kind of how that works. So if you have a movie that's, let's say, 2 hours, 120 pages, right? 120 minutes, 120 pages, and you need to novelize it, you're just adding context, you're just adding detail, you're just adding more context to what's already written in the script, right? That's what I'm assuming is happening with novelizations. You're not changing anything that's in there. You're just adding stuff that isn't in the movie, or you're writing down descriptions for what you're seeing from the movie, basically, right? So, like, when they describe Allerdale Hall, obviously in the script, it might describe it as, like, a big Gothic house, right? Very simple, not a lot. It's mostly up to the director, the art people, the costume people who then design the set, the costumes, etc. It's not super detailed in the script. It's thought of in notes separate from the script, right? Because in the script, you don't need to know every single detail of her dress or his hair or the arches in the house or whatever, right? Unless it's really, really, really important to the script. So scripts are pretty sparse when it comes to those types of details, unless those details are, like, so important to what happens, right? So the fact that they completely changed things and added things in there to, like, I don't know, bulk up the book more or something and try to change it to make it more thrilling? I don't know. I don't know why these changes were made. I could talk for hours about this, I swear to God, and I've already talked about it for 15 minutes. Thank you for listening to me talk about it for 15 minutes, but, like, it's just so bizarre. Like, book to movie adaptations, it makes sense because you're fitting, you know, like 300 pages into what should be like 90 pages maybe. Like, you really have to make cuts, you have to condense things. It makes sense that you're taking a big thing, smushing it down into a smaller thing, and that's what gets produced, right? It doesn't make sense to me that you take a tiny thing and you expand upon it, but you do it in such a way that pulls away from what the original source material was. Like, that's weird to me, that was how that worked out for this book. That's what I'm trying to say. So, did not enjoy this. It's fresh on my mind because, like I said, I finished it last night. It ticked me off. As someone who adores this movie, it's like one of my favorites of all time. The novel it was so frustrating to read. I read it all in a day too, so I was just like, oh my God, dude, like, freaking, are you kidding me? So anyways, yeah, that's what I read. I read How to Sell a Haunted House at the very, very end of December, Rotten Tommy, which was okay, Babel, which was amazing, and Crimson Peak, which I hated. Movie I love, book I hate. I don't know if I'll ever read this book again. I don't know. But that's it for now, unless I read and finish another book within the week, because as I'm recording this, there's one more week in January. but it depends on how tired I am and how sleepy I am and how much stuff I have to do. Surprise, I did fit in one more book. Technically speaking, I finished it in February. However, the majority of it, like all of the book except for the last like 30 pages, were read in January. So I'm counting it in January, even though I read the last 30 pages in February. But this book's like 330 pages long, something like that. So like literally most of it was in January. So I'm counting it. In the Study with a Wrench is what I read, which is a Clue mystery novel. It is young adult, I'm pretty sure. It's about teenagers. They're all like 17 years old. I read the first book at least a year ago, at most 2 years ago, which is what are you called? In the Hall with a Knife. In the Hall with a Knife is the first one. In the Study with a Wrench is the second one. This book was good, but also not. I don't know how else to describe it. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars for my rating on my Fable page, which if you want to follow me there, I guess do so. I have a Goodreads too, but I'm not active on it. I just still have it because my friends are on there, but like I use Fable now, which I don't know if that's necessarily much better, but I use that now instead. Anyways, yeah, this one was all right. Pretty middle of the road. Like, it was entertaining, but this is supposed to be a mystery book. And it kind of failed as a mystery book, in my opinion. I don't read a lot of mystery. However, it felt like it missed the mystery bit, and it felt a lot more like it was just teenage drama. And there was, like, a murder that happens in the beginning that doesn't really mean anything. I don't know how else to describe that. Like, if you read the book, it'll make sense, but it's kind of weird. And then who the killer is kind of like, to me, it felt a little out of left field. Like, okay. And I'm like, maybe I'm just unobservant. I don't know. But I feel like this book didn't do a good job of leaving proper clues for you to guess and look back on it and be like, now I see the pattern. It also didn't really give you any red herrings, which make it really fun. Like, the red herrings that it did give, I felt were incredibly obvious, and therefore they were failed, so they aren't really red herrings. Like, it kind of felt obvious that this character is suspicious, but it's not because they're the one that did the murder. Anyways. So, in terms of a mystery book, which is what it is, it failed. In terms of a drama, a teen drama book, I was like, this is awesome. So that's why I gave it a 3 out of 5, because I'm like, it's like right in the middle. It's a fun read. I enjoyed it weirdly more than the first book, which was much better with mystery. Like, the first book was a mystery book that had some teen drama in there, but like, you suspected everyone. There were a ton of red herrings. There were also a bunch of clues leading up to it. And even in that one, it was kind of like someone that I didn't really, well, I was going to say I didn't really expect, but that's not true, because when I met that person in the book who was the murderer of the first book, I was like, oh, it's this person because of these reasons. And like, I don't think it's any of these main characters. I don't think it's any of these people over here. I think it's one of these other people over here. Specifically that one, because I feel like they made it really obvious to try to not suspect that person, which is why I suspect that person. And then in the end, it ended up being that person. In this one, I had the very opposite. Like, it felt like, yes, it was a continuation of the first book, but it was also like the opposite. They had a lot more mystery, even though it was really easy to figure out who it was. There was a lot more mystery. There were a lot more clues that made sense, red herrings that like really threw a wrench into things in the first book. In the second book, it was just like a teen drama, essentially, dealing with the fallout of the first book. But there also happened to be a murder plot that didn't do anything. Quite literally, no one really did anything with it until literally the last 30 pages. So, like, the whole time I was reading it, I was like, where's the mystery? Like, yes, there are some strange things happening, but, like, where's the mystery? Where's the sleuthing? Where are the clues? Where are the red herrings? Like, where are the things that make it a mystery book? This is a mystery book. Where's the mystery? Like, the biggest mystery is, like, who killed this character, but also none of the characters really care that character died or who killed them. And it was just very strange, because I was like, no one is interested in investigating this. So what the fuck is the mystery? What's the point of it? No one is investigating. They're just living their lives, and there happens to be a murder and some other strange stuff happening in the background. And then, like I said, in like the last 30 pages, it kind of ramps up randomly, and then everyone's suspecting everyone, and it gets really crazy. And then, like, within 3 pages of everyone suspecting everyone, you discover who the killer maybe was. That was the other thing, too, is you don't know for sure that the person at the end of this book who is, I'm going to put in quotation marks, revealed as the killer is the killer, because there's no evidence to support it, because there were no clues. I mean, there were some clues, but like, it's not really. There was nothing substantial enough to warrant that character actually being the one who killed this character. Like, I wish I could go into it, but I don't want to spoil it. But it was very strange. It felt super, like, rushed. It really felt like this was trying more to be a teen drama, but because it's supposed to be a mystery novel, they were like, we'll just kill someone in the beginning. We'll have a random person be the killer over here, and like, we'll just have it happening in the background. None of it really matters. We're focused on the aftermath of what happened in the first book, more so than the murder at hand. It was just very strange. So yeah, in terms of it being like a mystery book, it was bad. In terms of it being a really dramatic kind of cool story, it was good. But like, if you're reading this to be a mystery novel, which it is, you will be severely disappointed. If, however, you just want a continuation of the last story and you're okay with it not being like a murder mystery thing, then this book is fine. So yeah, that was this one. It was very easy to read. It was like 330 pages, but I read it in a day, basically. I read 300 pages in one day, and then it was bedtime, so I was like, I gotta go to bed. And then I had stuff I had to do the next day. So I couldn't finish it within January, but then like the day after, I was like, all right, let's do it. And then I just finished the last 30 pages. Anyways, this was the 4th book. I did squeeze it in right at the end in the last like day or 2 of January. Is really good. I'm enjoying the other book that I started reading too. So 4 books in January. Check me out. Woo! My goal was 2. But I'm ahead. I'm going to try to keep this pace now, because I like being able to do 3 or 4 books in a month. That was kind of initially what I wanted, like years ago when I first was trying to get back into reading. I really wanted to do like 1 book a week, which is kind of what I'm doing, except that Babel did take me 3 weeks to do. Yeah. But that was it. That was my reading for January. I had fun. It was nice. Yeah, in general. I mean, it was some of it was kind of rough. 2 books were kind of rough. This one's kind of middle of the road. Babel was excellent. But I'm enjoying all of the books that I'm reading, you know? I think they're pretty fun. They have merits to them. They have something that I think someone will enjoy in all of them so far. Maybe except Crimson Peak. That one was kind of garbage, which was very disappointing because I love that movie. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you guys so much for joining me with the book talkiness on this random side channel where I just post whatever. That's it. Have a good day. Bye.